Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. Our talk is called Men Are From Earth, Women Are From Earth, Understanding Key Leadership Principles.
Just a reminder to silence out your phones. That'd be great, so that's not a distraction for anyone. Before we start, we're going to do a little introduction. So my name is Nora. I'm an executive producer and head of production services at Secret Location. I joined Secret Location 11 years ago as its first employee, starting out as their project manager that helped build their team to what it is today with 80 people in Toronto and LA. The company started out working on cross-platform projects for entertainment properties and evolved throughout the years to now focusing more on developing our own products as well as our own creative IP. I worked on several projects from early days of Flash, responsive websites, mobile apps, games, large-scale installations, VR and 360 production. I'm now in the product team, so I moved a couple years ago from content to product, where we build distribution platforms for VR premium publishers like the New York Times, AMC, National Geographic, and many more. And I have a new mission that's similar to early days of Secret Location, where I'm helping build out their innovation lab. I can't give you too many details, it's not public information yet, but stay tuned for more information on that. I'm really excited about that new chapter in our company.
And I'm Catherine. I'm an executive producer and head of content at Secret Location. I joined the company 7 years ago. Before joining, I didn't really think much about leadership or advancing in my career. I just wanted to make cool stuff. But Secret Location has a strong track record of growth, so I found myself taking on more and more responsibilities and really enjoying it. So I now run our content department where we make VR content with a focus on games. So this is some of the content that we've released to market. We have Transpose, which is a surreal puzzle game, The Great Sea, which is a cinematic animated narrative, and Blasters of the Universe, which is the first game we released, and it's a bullet hell shooter. So here's a top-level agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to explain why we're here, what we learned, which breaks down into the 4 principles and the 5 sins. We're going to leave you with some takeaways and then leave some time for Q&A. So why are we here? We started exploring leadership methodologies in an effort to make ourselves better leaders. And through this process, we discovered we also wanted to share these learnings as well as candid stories from our professional histories. So in preparation, we did some initial research, books, articles, podcasts, anything we could get our hands on. We started with a focus on what it means to lead as women and posed the question, can we become better leaders by understanding the differences between men and women? In asking that question, we were confronted with a lot of stereotypes. Women are socialized to collaborate, men to win, confidence comes easily to men, for women, not so much, men can have conflict all day long, but go back to being pals after work. Women have a harder time letting things go. So we didn't really like this. Here's the thing, we don't want to act like men to get ahead, we want to succeed as women. We're not saying that some of these things aren't true, we're just saying we don't want to focus on them. So instead we focused on what makes a leader great in general.
So in terms of what we did next, we wanted to dig a little deeper and get intel on a personal level. So we interviewed several successful women leaders in the business to get their perspective, learn more about their experiences, their life's lesson and challenges. We also interviewed aspiring female leaders to see how they can relate to some of those challenges and how they plan on navigating them. To get a full picture, we also interviewed male executives to see what they had to say about whether they managed men and women differently. We loved the interviews, and it really helped inform our discussion points and solidify our thinking around the presentation and leadership in general. So we took the knowledge from our research, the interviews, our personal experience, and distilled that into 4 main principles. We will talk about the key elements of leadership that resonated with us within those 4. Whether or not they come easier to men or women is not the point here. They're skills that are essential to any leader. We both love to learn through hearing other people's stories and thought to do the same for you guys here today. Okay, so let's get started. The 4 main principles are self-awareness, taking risks, executive presence, and being human.
So the first principle So the first principle, self-awareness. In simple terms, self-awareness is knowing who you are, your strengths and weaknesses. It can be further broken down into internal versus external awareness. So internal being knowing who you are, and external being understanding how other people perceive you. And the two types of self-knowledge are not necessarily related. So just because I see myself clearly doesn't mean I understand how others perceive me, and vice versa. So this slide shows some of my strengths and weaknesses. I think I know myself fairly well, but I can sometimes have a blind spot for external awareness. So recently I was in a meeting with a bunch of colleagues and we were breaking out tasks between us. And my colleague said to me, Catherine, why don't you take on this task because you're the most chill person in the room? And it was totally shocking to me because I do not see myself as a chill person at all. I mean, I think this slide is not the strengths and weaknesses of a chill person. So I guess I can have a blind spot for external awareness sometimes. One of the books we read is a book called Insight by psychologist Tasha Eurich. And in the book, she says that studies state that 95% of people think they're self-aware, but studies also state that only 10 to 15% of people actually are self-aware. Studies also state that people who are more self-aware tend to be more successful at work, and companies with a larger percentage of self-aware employees tend to be more financially successful. So I would say that even if you think you're self-aware, you should probably do everything you can to grow or refine your self-awareness. So how do you build self-awareness? Feedback is a great way to do it. It's a tricky thing, both to receive and deliver. I'm going to focus on receiving it because that's what I'm tying to building self-awareness. So if someone comes to you with a piece of feedback that you find to be negative, there's two ways you can kind of deal with it. You can get offended and ignore it, or you can think about it and think about what you can learn from it. It's really all about perspective. So in my early days of being a producer, I was really bad at hearing feedback. Someone from my team would come to me with feedback about a project or process, and I thought because I hadn't come up with the idea that I wasn't doing a good job. And so it would send me into a tailspin. But here is a critical piece of wisdom. It's okay to not know things. I mean, nobody can know everything, and it's also an opportunity to learn. So it took me years of self-assessment and growth to realize that by listening to feedback from my team, I was fostering collaboration as well as their growth. So my process today is that I do monthly check-ins with everyone on my team, about 20 people, and at each of them I ask, do you have any feedback for me? And do you have any feedback for the department? And I use any of their notes to make myself and our department stronger. One of the women we spoke with had a really interesting story of self-awareness. She had a mirror in her office. It was not intentional. She just put it up as a piece of decor, but it was a big giant mirror. And she could see herself in it all the time, like how she interacted with others, how she spoke on the phone, how she looked when she was at work. And it really forced her to really rethink about how she operated at work. So it was a really interesting story of growing self-awareness.
For myself, as I progressed in my career, I didn't receive feedback to the level that I wanted. Reporting to the president meant scheduled feedback that is performance-driven. I was interested in more in how to handle day-to-day situations and know whether what I was doing was not only a good approach, but the best approach. Over the years, I've become more self-sufficient and didn't really feel like I need to seek that kind of feedback. However, I still wanted to get feedback on how to be a better person and a better leader. My focus is on people because I truly believe that their success is tied to mine. One of the ways to get feedback is to ask for it. Now, the tricky part is finding the best person to get it from, because it cannot help you if it's not constructive or if it was filtered. I heard of this concept of a loving critic at the Art of Leadership conference by one of the speakers, Tasha Eurich, who wrote the book Catherine mentioned earlier. It really resonates with me. A loving critic, in simple terms, means someone who has your best interests at heart and at the same time can give you honest and direct feedback regardless of your reaction to it. One or few people in your life to go to for advice as another gut check. It's like an extreme 360 review on the go. One of my loving critics is Catherine, and it's truly been helpful to me when dealing with sensitive situations that literature can't really help you navigate at times. Sometimes honest feedback is not constructive, and your loving critic is one that can give you both. When it came to more formal career building and advice and feedback, I got myself a coach several years ago, and at that point I was transitioning from a producer to a supervising producer, so I needed someone to help me with that transition. It was definitely a worthwhile experience for me because it taught me a lot about myself and helped build my external self-awareness. On the slide here, you can see one of the exercises, which was really helpful, that my coach gave this to me. You basically ask a few people you work with, manage, as well as report to have a quick meeting, maybe over coffee or lunch, and ask them these questions in the spirit of helping you identify personal development goals. So the questions are, can you describe your experience of me when I'm at my best, the qualities you notice, what it's like to work and engage with me? Can you describe your experience of me when I'm not at my best? That's a really good question. Can you share an example of a time that I brought most value to the work you do? What can I do more of to support you, and what can I do less of to support you? So a little coaching story for you. I remember one time I was on this conference call and there was a group of people. One of the people on the call was a bit aggressive with me, and I'm not really sure why. And I was at that point not able to respond in the level of authority that I wanted. And I think the most important thing about that is that I felt really embarrassed because it was in front of a bunch of people. So it bothered me the whole day. So I called my coach and I told her, well, this is what happened. And she said, well, go back to that situation. Who should be the one who's embarrassed? And that really made me think, and my feelings changed instantly. Yes, I shouldn't be the one who's embarrassed about it. I was calm, I was respectful. I didn't put someone down in front of the group. I want to be respected for my values, my hard work, the way I carry myself and treat other people, not because of being aggressive or making people afraid of me. I believe it's healthier for you to be a good person. It's actually healthier for your body and self-respect to be a good person than to be just like a straight up asshole. Here's a quote by Dalai Lama. Humans create problems by discriminating on account of our differences, but these are secondary. At the level of our basic humanness, there is no source of conflict. Basic human nature is compassion. So it's unhealthy for us to be assholes, and some can't be, and you can't see some of the physical effects of being that kind of person on your bodies until it's a bit too late. And now take time to reflect and understand my emotions before I start reacting to it. Most of the leaders we interviewed didn't have a career coach, so it's not a tool that everyone uses. But depending on your personality, your goals, and specific needs, it might not be a good fit for you. If getting a coach is not your thing, using the loving critic is a great strategy for you.
So the second principle is taking risks and being okay with failing. So there's a lot of talk about failure especially in tech, embrace failure, fail fast, all that stuff. But I think there's a lot of value in it when it's used correctly. So years ago, I heard this podcast on This American Life called The Batman. It's about this man named Daniel Kish, who when he was a baby, lost both of his eyes to cancer. But when he was a kid, he developed this really unique form of echolocation where he makes clicking noises and he's able to perceive the world around him and essentially see. And that allows him to live this very independent life. He can, as an adult now, ride a bike, he can go on hikes, he can effectively see the world around him. And one of the things that seemed to be behind this is that when he was a kid, his mom let him fail constantly, like to the point of injury. So as he was growing this echolocation, it wasn't perfect. He had to kind of refine it. And so he would try to ride a bike and there was a pole at the end of his street and he would often run into that pole and hurt himself. But his mom just let him pick himself up and keep trying. So Daniel has a really great quote in that podcast. Running into a pole is a drag, but never being allowed to run into a pole is a disaster. Yeah, and I love this quote. And I think he's saying that the fact that he was allowed to run into poles made him the independent person he is today, and people who don't have that opportunity live more sheltered lives. So I think we all have the ability to take risks when we're talking about our careers. And I think that you likely do take risks every day in your personal and professional life. The key is being aware of it, and that when you fail, to unpack it and think about what you can learn from it and how you can try something different next time. It's kind of like A/B testing. You have to try different things until you get to the result that you want. It's a real process. And risk-taking can be really small, like expressing yourself in front of your peers in an informal setting. This is something that I personally had to develop. I'm a very opinionated person, and I speak out a lot when I'm comfortable, but when I'm around strangers or uncomfortable, I can be quite shy. So all throughout university, I never spoke out. I would was just super quiet. And if the teacher called on me to comment on something, it was like the worst thing that could ever happen. But I realized when I got into the professional world that this behavior was not helpful to me at all. So I had to change it. So I started speaking up, sometimes to embarrassing results, but I kept at it. And now I actually have to practice the opposite. I have to practice letting other people speak. So I have to practice not speaking up. And when I think about risk-taking, I often think about this episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, called The Tapestry. In this episode, Captain Picard is very regretful of this bar fight he got into as a young cadet where he got stabbed in the heart. He's looking back at it as a seasoned captain, and he sees himself as cocky and arrogant. So the all-powerful alien Q sends him back in time so he can avoid the bar fight. So he does, and then he gets put back forward into his current present timeline, and he's no longer captain of the Enterprise. He's this dreary science officer, and he's pretty unhappy about it. So I have a clip from that.
Having a good laugh now, Q. Does it amuse you to think of me living out the rest of my life as a dreary man in a tedious job?
I gave you something most mortals never experience. A second chance at life. And now all you can do is complain?
I can't live out my days as that person. That man is bereft of passion and imagination. That is not who I am.
Au contraire, he's the person you wanted to be. One who was less arrogant and undisciplined in his youth. One who was less like me. The Jean-Luc Picard you wanted to be, the one who did not fight the Nausicaan, had quite a different career from the one you remember. That Picard never had a brush with death, never came face to face with his own mortality, never realized how fragile life is or how important each moment must be. So his life never came into focus. He drifted through much of his career with no plan or agenda, going from one assignment to the next, never seizing the opportunities that presented themselves. He learned to play it safe. And he never, ever got noticed by anyone.
So I love that clip. It's just obviously a very dramatic way of showing that if you don't take risks, if you don't take opportunities, you might not like where you end up.
In her book, Same Words, Different Language, Barbara Ennis talks about women's feelings of being tested and this assumption that women just don't have what it takes. There's that unspoken question, does she know her stuff? It's as if women have a different starting point. From our interviews, we got mixed results on this concept. Some stated that they felt they had to double work to prove themselves to their manager, especially when it came to more technical jobs like lighting and post-production. And some of it is due to years of bias that evolved and along the way became more of an unconscious bias. They also believe that women suffer from the imposter syndrome more than men, and it affects what jobs they actually apply for. The imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their own accomplishment and has this persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Some executives in high positions feel that way, and that can feed into the feeling of fear of being tested. So how do you deal with that? Challenging men and taking a stand for when you see bias without being unnecessarily confrontational, especially in a group setting. Talking to someone one-on-one is the best first step, because as we mentioned earlier, not everyone is self-aware. When you know what you're doing is right, it helps you go through it. It's important to remind yourself that you are at your position for a reason. You worked hard and know a lot of things that people probably don't know. It might have become second nature to you, but your experience is valued, so you should own it. Tied to this is knowledge gaps. Personally, it took me a long time to be okay with not knowing all the answers, or coming off as someone who's not as informed as everyone else on the table, or so I assumed. We all have knowledge gaps, especially in our industry. I like to work with those who admit what they know and don't know up front, and ask questions than those who fake it till they make it. By you being open and direct with those who are around you, it invites others to do the same. It makes for a more collaborative experience where there's no culture of fear, and everyone is sharing their knowledge to push everyone else forward.
Okay, so the third principle is executive presence. And this is often described as an X factor that some people have that makes people want to listen to them and makes people want to follow them. I think of it as interchangeable with confidence. And there's really nothing worse than when someone says to you, just be more confident, because the how is completely lacking. So I'm a very organized person. I have a friend who is the polar opposite. She's always late. She can't keep her house in order. She just struggles with organization in general. So a few years ago, she said, I want to learn how to be more organized from you. So she came over to my house. She had a notebook. She was ready to learn. And as I started to try to explain how to be organized, I realized I couldn't. Like, I totally failed her. I didn't help her, because organization comes so naturally to me. It feels like something I was born with. So it was really hard for me to explain it to someone else. So I understand why confident people, it's hard for them to explain how to be confident. So organization came naturally to me, but confidence did not. So how do you build confidence? I think it goes back to self-awareness. A lot of these lessons really do. Knowing who you are means knowing how you learn. For me, it was a very slow, steady incline of seeing small successes in my career and slowly realizing, okay, I'm capable, I'm good at my job. And then I think the real turning point for me was when I was able to turn my inner critic, that voice in my head that would criticize me and say like, oh, why did you do that? That was so stupid, blah, 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 into my inner teacher. So slowly I was able to let go of that critical side of the voice. And when things that were not optimal happened, I would just say, okay, so that happened. What am I going to do different next time? So it became a lot more productive and a lot less critical. But yeah, it was years of trial and error for me, a real slow build. I also did practical things like improv classes. So this is something that was very scary for me. I don't like performing in front of people. I don't like meeting a bunch of new people. But I did it, I committed to it, and it was actually really fun, and it was a really collaborative experience in a really non-judgmental environment, and I learned how to think more quickly on my feet. I also committed to things that scared me at goal-setting meetings with my boss, like public speaking. Something about putting it on paper made me commit to sign up for it and to practice and hone my skills. And I think public speaking is something that's actually hard for most people. I think it's very rare that people are just born with the ability to speak in front of other people. One of the women we spoke with, we've both seen speak, and she seems like a gifted speaker. You know, she effortlessly commands the room, super confident. But she confided in us that she gets nervous before she speaks every time, and she has to practice for hours and hours and hours before she speaks. So this is a level of commitment to growth that I aspire to in my own career. Another leadership theme is apologizing. And this is something that's also highlighted as a thing that men don't do, but women overdo. Recently, I was on a conference call, and one of my male colleagues admitted to a mistake. He didn't use the words, I'm sorry. He just said something like, oh, I dropped that, but I'm on it now. And it was totally fine. The only reason I noticed it is that I was doing all this research and I was really thinking about it. So I was hyper aware about apologizing. So I, again, was able to evolve my apology strategy by building self-awareness. Don't get me wrong, I fully believe that everyone should own up to their mistakes when it makes sense, but just once, not over and over, because that doesn't help you and it doesn't help the person that you're apologizing to. I also think there's a lot of power in saying thank you instead of I'm sorry. Recently, I had to pull a bunch of members from my team into a meeting last minute to present a concept. And so they did it, and it went well. And then after, I consciously thought about it, and instead of saying I'm sorry for pulling in last minute, I said thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And it felt really true and powerful, and it felt really good. I also do practical things like editing my emails before I send them. I seek out apologetic or indirect language. And this is when I'm trying to convey information to someone in an email, this is the sentence I always write first. I just wanted to let you know. And I don't know where it comes from, but I go back in and I take out the just and other words like that because they don't really help convey the information.
Another helpful one is replacing but with and. I think the word but, and I'm guilty of that, is overused, and it should be more used on like changing a negative over to a positive. So just try that out, be more aware of it. Brought up a couple examples here on the slide. So replacing but with and, it has that negative connotation to it. A good example of how to use it is we're going through a lot of changes, but I believe we can overcome them. So in that kind of setup would be more appropriate. Another tip is knowing how to be effective when asking questions. I don't know if you notice this, but sometimes when you're asking a question, you start with like this long story and then you get to the question at the end. And so it kind of distracts the person you're asking the question to, from like knowing where you're going and how to answer whatever that question may be. So here's an example. Let's say a design lead goes into a producer and say, the team went over character designs and are not happy with one of them. It didn't match the look and feel of the environment. And this whole time the producer's like, okay, where's this going? Do we have time in our schedule to make more design updates? So the way to go about it is actually switch it up. Do we have time in our schedule? Make more design changes. So that's like, okay, cool, I get it. They're asking me about this, but why? And then give them more context. So just become more aware of that, and it will definitely help you be more effective. The fourth principle and the final one is being human. A question we asked every leader, do you manage men and women differently? They all said no. They manage people differently because they're all different. We think that's very true and important. When we lead people, we have to remember that they're all human and they're inspired differently. Over the years, I had to deal with many difficult situations involving people. When making tough decisions, my gut and instinct played a big role. One of the leaders we interviewed called it a personal brand. As a leader, you need to identify what you stand for, your values, and your personality traits that represent you. So when I run into a situation where I'm not sure how to react to it, I would look back at those brand values and that person who embodies them and see what they would do about it. My brand becomes my compass that directs me to the right path. How to treat people, how to react to tough situations, difficult personalities, and even help bring calmness to an unpredictable situation. So here's a sample from my brand. Who I am, I'm loyal, dedicated, hardworking, empathetic, and honest. Who I'm not, comparing myself to others, and I think that's a very important one to keep in mind. And I'm egotistical, selfish, disrespectful, and fake.
Not those things.
Not those things. Not those things. I actually asked my team when I was doing a rehearsal, I'm like, do you guys agree with any of this? Am I not self-aware? So far, it's fine. Another helpful tool to use when resolving conflict is journaling. So choose a week in which you observe your own behavior and assess what worked, what didn't. It's important to study yourself and those who are around you that are successful in areas that you want to work on. For example, when dealing with sensitive issues, from my journaling, I noticed that I find myself calm when I'm prepared. So I always tend to do that now. My brain doesn't have to make a decision on how to react at the moment, which at times can default to letting my emotions get the best of me. If you know yourself well, you can predict how you would react to situations and become more prepared when running into a conflict. So when you're facing conflict, be human, connect to people on a human level first, understand yourself and those who are around you. A quick physical technique, more of a tip, that I learned is when having conversations to make sure that your feet are planted on the ground. It helps with flowing the energy and making you feel more grounded. I actually tried that and it worked for me, so I'll give that a shot. The standards that I set for myself in life and at work were at times the root cause for challenges that I faced when leading others. So over the years of at times feeling disappointed when people didn't do things the way I expected, just out of interest, who feels this way? Okay, cool. So over the years of feeling disappointed, I think I had to learn more about needing to take the time to be more patient with others and picture them in the light of doing the best that they are able to do, and understand why they did it that way. I don't like to micromanage. I find it very destructive to the relationship. I'd rather inspire people to do things rather than tell them to do it. So having said that, sometimes your best is not good enough and a reason to let someone go. And so the challenge here is assess the value of the relationship and the pros and cons of giving others chances to course correct. With that comes a follow-up issue. When is it the right time to let someone go? And how many chances does it take before it becomes a problem to you and the office culture? So regular feedback, ideally as soon as issues arise, along with a strict hiring process, are key to handling and mitigating those issues. Our company has gone through a lot of changes, from the work we do to the roles we hire. The constant is the people. In his book, Good to Great, by Jim Collins, an amazing book, by the way, he mentions that it's not about where the bus is headed, it's who on the bus that matters. The direction of the company can change and develop, and the people are the constant, and the right people will lead you to the right direction and see the big picture. Here's a great quote by Walt Disney that also speaks to that concept. You can design and create and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes people to make that dream a reality. What made the company's culture so successful is its transparency. You have to ensure that those you surround yourself with have common values and sense of commitment to the goals that you've set. In order for that to happen, everyone on your team needs to understand the vision of the company and where it's headed. Some executives might assume that their employees would be overwhelmed with information if they were provided with that, but from my experience, it's actually the contrary. They crave it. Everyone on some level wants to have that sense of belonging, a purpose, and want to be part of something bigger. Share where you're headed, the risks that you want to take, what excites you, and what you need help with to move yourself and everyone else forward. They will feel valued and inspired to think beyond what their role is on paper. You might say my company's culture doesn't allow for that level of transparency, and I would say you are then sacrificing your culture and have to think of other ways to motivate and make the people who work for you feel secured and inspired. Now let's talk about the do-nots of being a leader, along with some examples from our experience.
So the first is do what I say, not what I do, or the inverse, which is leading by example. So I've been very lucky to work with leaders who are the hardest working people at the company. They don't act like their time is more valuable than anyone else's. And this is a critical quality that is important to me personally, and also in the people that I work with. I've also worked with leaders who are the opposite, who believe that people should do as they say, not as they do, and this will 100% create an unhappy work environment. So years ago, I worked for this company, and one of the bosses, one day a week, every week, would go for a few hours in the afternoon and play sports. And because he was also a micromanager, no work could really get done while he was gone, or if it did, it would have to get redone. So he would come back toward end of day and give his direction, and because our schedule or timelines didn't shift just because he needed to play basketball, we would have to all stay late and finish our work. And everybody hated it. And the worst thing is that if you wanted personal time off for a doctor's appointment or whatever, he was pretty inflexible about it. So he had different rules for himself. The second one is being entitled. So this is something I keep a close watch on in myself. I don't think I'm an entitled person, but I don't ever want to become one. Just because I'm a boss, it doesn't mean I deserve special treatment. I've seen this in other people. They get promoted, they start to act superior. And I think they think it will get them respect, but I think it really gets them the opposite. So I worked at a company a few years back that was going through a slow period. So they took all employees' hours and pay and cut it back to 60% of full time. And then at the same time, one of the bosses went to France for 3 months to hang out. So I can see why he felt entitled to this, because he had the time, he had the money. But when the rest of us were struggling to pay our rent, it was a pretty hard thing to stomach. And even though the company bounced back, a lot of people left at the same time, including me. One of the podcasts I listened to with a leader said that to be a great leader, you have to be selfless. You have to put the needs of your reports above your own. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. At minimum, you have to put the need of your reports at the same level as yours. But this boss was not this way. He always put himself first, and the company morale really suffered because of it.
The third one is making false promises. Don't be a leader who doesn't commit to the success of your team. Performance reviews or check-ins are key touch points that each employee looks forward to see what their leaders think of them, how they're performing, and ways to improve. Take it seriously and follow through on your end with what you've promised them. Whether it's more regular check-ins, training, access to other benefits, working on an upcoming project that they're interested in that's suitable for them, to name a few. Trust is earned, not given, and it goes both ways. If you ever wonder why someone who reports to you is going to someone else for help, ask yourself whether it's something to do with your relationship, the trust, and whether with your follow-through or the lack of it. Fourth one is keeping a narrow field of view. To be a leader, you need to see points that are diverse in nature to ensure that there are no blind spots. Some companies, for example, do regular surveys to assess and study the status of their culture, its strengths and weaknesses, and make next steps. You can run into the risk of demotivating your employees if you don't share the results or action on them. So be sure to do that to benefit from that exercise. Fifth one is celebrating success. While working in a fast-paced environment, at times I tend to move on to the next thing without taking time to celebrate the little accomplishments along the way. I'm aware of that, and I attempt my best to ensure that I acknowledge the hard work that's put into our projects every step of the way. At our company, we start and end the week together. Every Monday, we have a stand-up to quickly go over some highlights from last week and also go through what we call the props box. It's like a little box where anyone can write a little props to someone else and dedicate it to. So something like they want to celebrate from running a great alpha presentation to bringing homemade cookies to the office one day. We celebrate project launches and hold company events. We celebrate new team members. We even celebrate new babies. We even have our own awards show every year. It's like the Dundies, if you're a fan of The Office. Yeah, it's exactly like that, where where everyone wins a trophy for a random category. And it sounds a bit out there, I know, but that's who we are as people. We take any chance we can get to celebrate the small and big wins. And on that note, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to my team, some of them are here, of passionate, hardworking, inspiring people who without them, I wouldn't have lasted in one company for that long. I would also thank the women we've interviewed and everyone who interviewed, some of which are here with us today. Maybe? Any of you? No. Okay. There's a couple. Cool.
Okay, so now we're going to leave you with some takeaways, just some high-level thoughts from what we discussed. So solicit feedback all the time. There are a bunch of different ways to do this. Figure out what works for you. Take risks, start small, go from there. Build your executive presence. Again, there's lots of different ways to do this. Figure out what is best for you. Define your brand values. Understanding who you are will help guide you through tricky situations. Be transparent. Be open about not knowing everything. Be transparent with your team. Celebrate your team. Make their needs a priority. And I think by far the biggest lesson is to be open. Be open to hearing about things about yourself that are not great. Be open to learning. We can all grow and evolve. We just need to want to. And I think closely tied to that is that you have to be committed to the work forever. You don't just become a leader and you're like, okay, there, I'm done. I know it all. Good. You have to forever and continually grow your self-awareness, your risk-taking behavior, your executive presence, and your humanity. This is something you have to be committed to for the rest of your career. So in that spirit, these are 3 things that I'm working on in my career. So the first is using stop energy in meetings. So as my background as a producer, part of my job is to get ahead of problems or when a project is going to break. So when I'm at say like a creative brainstorm and people are presenting ideas and I can see so many problems with them, it's really hard for me to not express that. But I know that can be really detrimental to the creative process. So I have to practice really hard, not saying anything. The second is checking things off my list before they're done. I have a lot of lists, both in my personal and professional life, and nothing gives me more satisfaction than crossing something off that list. Like, it's the best part of my day. So sometimes my desire to do that will trump my desire to get it done to the level that it needs to be done at. And the third one is delegating. This is something I do all the time, but it's something I have to really remind myself to do because I'm a control freak. I like things done a certain way, and it's taken me a lot of letting go and growth to realize that it's okay if somebody does it differently as long as they get to the result that's needed.
For myself, my 3 are tapping into the power of influence as I'm building out the Innovation Lab, learning more about self-care methods for myself and the team. Self-care I think is very important, and I'm starting to get really interested in meditation. I feel there's a lot of power in meditation, active brain and body through education, training, and exercise. And finally, public speaking and knowledge share through community events and social media. Definitely have to work on that bit. For those who are interested, here are some of the books that we read during our research. We didn't agree with everything that was said in the books, but at the same time, we found great value in reading them and taking the best lessons that we can relate to. I'm just gonna pause here for a second for pictures. Cool. Final thoughts. Working on this presentation has been such an empowering experience that I believe we will keep working and discussing and talk at work, at other conferences with friends and family. We presented to you today some high-level as well as day-to-day takeaways that you can apply today. We wanted to keep this presentation focused on personal experiences that were also informed by those who have interviewed and as well as our research. Leadership is a theme that everyone can relate to, and we feel very privileged to be able to share and speak to you all about it today. I hope it was meaningful to you as it was for us. Now, time to take some questions. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mark. I'm from Creative Assembly in the UK. What you were saying linked in with the Jean-Luc Picard clip.
Yeah.
Really, really rung true.
Of course.
I've got a lot of younger people on my team who I can see making the same mistakes that I did 15 years ago. What would your advice be for kind of encouraging them without coming across too condescending?
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
I think it's very delicate because you don't want to come off as someone who just, you still have a lot of knowledge, so you kind of have to tell them what might come up if they were to proceed in that path in a very delicate way. Bring up an example from your own personal experience without, I think that's how they would connect to it versus just saying like, don't do that. It's just, when I run into that situation, this is what happened. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I'm really candid with people about that. Like, I'm like, oh, this used to be a problem for me, and this is how I got through it. I think that's really helpful. And I think it's also valuable to let young people make mistakes as well, you know, because you do learn that way. Something I do, we have a bunch of producers at the office, but they're in kind of different departments or working on different things. So I try to bring them together once a month, and I'm like, I solicit like, what are you guys struggling with? What do we need to talk about? And then so we spend the meeting talking about it, and we knowledge share about it. So I think it's kind of a non-confrontational way to get some points across. Like sometimes I will put some stuff on the agenda, which I can see are problems for people, you know?
Yeah, check-ins are very important for that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no
You
worries.
got it.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm kind of the nexus point right now between like 6 teams of people. 5 of them use our processes really well. 1 of them doesn't. And I've tried to approach this gently and nothing happens. And I've tried to approach it aggressively and they get real defensive and feel picked on, especially because they're the only ones who are struggling with following our processes correctly. Do you have any advice for how to tackle that kind of disconnect?
Can I ask you a question? Are they doing a good job otherwise?
They're doing an acceptable job.
I mean, yeah, like.
What happens is they do the work, but somewhere else they bring in assets that have been deprecated or introduce code that's not right.
Have you had like a direct conversation with them? Like this is, you know, it's really important that you do your job, like essentially like a warning.
Yeah, we've done that once or twice now, and it's just not proving to be real effective.
Well, I think check-ins are also important, but at some point, it's like what I was mentioning, when they're doing their best and it's not acceptable, then it's a question of whether it's worth that relationship to keep going. However, I do want to say that some people who don't follow process, it's because they don't see the benefit of it, and they see that there's another way of doing the same thing. So maybe having that conversation, why are you not following the process? Is there something that's missing? Maybe it's just the way that they operate doesn't let them think that way. So having an open conversation about the reasons behind it would help you make that decision.
Have you had that conversation? Like, why are you not doing this?
Yeah, they tend to blame the tool set.
Right.
The source control.
It's too complicated.
Have you asked them? Have you asked them to research? Have you given them like ownership? Like, hey, okay, fine. If you think different tools will work, you do the research. You tell me how much it's going to cost. Like, what is training going to look like for our teams? What's the impact on the business? Like, I don't know. It sounds like I'm very much. I feel like it's very rare that people are actually incompetent. I feel like it's either a wrong role fit or a wrong culture fit. Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like you've done everything right.
Well, I certainly make it sound that way.
If you want to email us after or whatever, we can chat
can
about
talk
it
to
more.
him.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Just we'll call
We'll
him.
call him up.
Hi, you talked about getting a coach. Could you elaborate on that more? Do you mean just like a mentor?
Like a career coach. So there are people who are just specialized in that. It's different than a mentor. It's more about like professional, like, oh, what are the goals that you have this year? How can I work with you on that? For example, one of my goals is like, I'm super emotional in meetings. So that's why the whole like planting your feet and like having these conversations, writing things down and journaling, the exercises of external awareness were also helpful. So one actually formal career coach where I'd go to her office and we would have a chat and I have access to her like for calls and whatnot. I tried that for about a year and at that point I was like, okay, I think I got this.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
No worries.
Hi.
Turtle Studios. Holy, okay. So I'm really short. You talked about how you introduced a props box as a weekly process, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how your team adapted to that, because like we've been trying to highlight the small wins, because like you said, don't just celebrate the big successes. Like delivering a milestone, like that's wonderful, but what about all the other little stuff?
Yes.
So we've tried a newsletter where we highlight things, but that doesn't feel like enough. But I also feel like a props box, like a lot of the team would be like, that's really cheesy. But I like that kind of stuff. So I was just curious as to how it went.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like most of the props are jokes, like, which is fine though. Like that's good
But
too.
you're focusing on something positive.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we do have like an incentive. We've incentivized it, so whoever gets the most props in a month gets to go. We have this thing called Wheel of Lunches, where once a week we have this like Wheel of Fortune wheel.
We do a lot of random
digital
shit.
that puts 3 people together for lunch, like on the company. So it's meant to kind of make sure everyone in the company is connecting, because we have we're probably about 60 people in the Toronto office,
Yeah.
working on a bunch of different things. So the person who gets the most props in a month is the MVP for the month, and they get to go out for lunch with every Wheel of Lunches. So there's free lunch. I mean, I think the thing is it's a strong culture fit for us, but maybe it's not for everyone. What kind of, like, is there anything that they respond to? Like anything
No,
like
we
that?
can incentivize stuff like that. Like, it's a great idea. We actually
Yeah.
already do something where we call it mystery lunches.
Yeah.
And each member of the executive team, including myself, we take 7 random people out to lunch
Awesome.
with us.
Nice, yeah.
And we make sure we have 3 different game teams. So we make sure there are people from different departments, different game teams, so that they get to know each other. But I feel like you could kind of tie it into something like that.
Yeah.
To just make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, at our Monday stand-up, right at the end, we have the Wheel of Lunches
Yeah.
with music and everything. There's a whole website. It's a thing. So 3 people are picked, and then we also go through the props box.
Yeah.
It's like there's a glitter. It's really cute. But we also have a snack table where it has all the snacks, so the props box is right beside it, so
That's
people
true.
will see it.
Snacks and props.
That's smart. I like it. All right,
all about
awesome.
food.
Thank
Nice
you. Your talk was
cookies.
great.
Oh, thank you so much.
You got it.
Hi. You talked a little bit about imposter syndrome. How do you cultivate a team culture that eliminates that or deals as much with it as you possibly can?
I think things like this, where there's knowledge share, are very important. So at our company, we have, I think it's every other Thursday, we do like a check this out, where someone can do a presentation on something they're passionate about or a project they just finished. So it kind of shows to the company what they have worked on, what they're interested in, and their knowledge skill set. So that way, it kind of makes other people's like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. And not only it helps that bond with people sharing the knowledge, but it also helps you build your own confidence in the sense of, yeah, I do know a lot, and that's a proof of it.
And I think also like making sure, like, I'm not always great at giving people compliments. It just doesn't come naturally to me, and for whatever reason. But anyway, so I really practice making sure when someone does like, oh, you were great in that meeting, like just
Yeah.
celebrate those things. I mean, the imposter syndrome is like, it's a really tricky thing. It is a psychological thing. Like I have experienced it, and I think I only kind of bypass it by like probably talking to a therapist or like, just like time, right? But I think doing what you can to make sure you're commenting when people do a good job, and like, it's something I think people forget to do. So I think it's something that's really valuable. I also think you shouldn't go too far the other side. Like your employees, like obviously you care a lot about them and their mental health, but you can't become their like therapist either, because that's just not helpful. But I think definitely celebrating and directly and telling them when they're doing a good job is important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, she was first, so
Oh, okay,
I'll let
thank
her.
you. So honest.
Thanks, that was really nice. So I'm part of a team that works across the country. There's a bunch of us in random cities around the US. Do you have recommendations for how to use a lot of these things to like encourage leadership, build team culture when you're not all in the same office?
Yeah, that's a tricky one for sure.
Yeah, I think when we had the LA office, that was a
Yes.
big question for us. Like,
Yeah.
how do we maintain the culture in another office? So we try our best to integrate them into our process as much as possible. So let's say, for example, when we do like town halls or meetings like that, we make sure that they're always video as well, video conferencing in, seeing the same presentation. When we try to do little activities where I think we had this basket going in from one office to the
yeah.
other,
Yeah.
where we would make a basket like that has a theme. Let's say it's Halloween, and we would send it to the LA office, and they would write something back and send it back and forth. There's like little things here and there that we would do. We also try to like visit each other's offices as much as possible. Not everybody, obviously, but send few people every like few months to have like just meet and collaborate on things.
Yeah, which is obviously not something that everybody can do, but I think there's ways of doing these celebratory things, like you just do it digitally, right? And like, yeah, making sure that, and I think it helps also to, instead of just always doing calls, is to definitely have a screen, like to see each other. Like, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No
no
worries.
worries. Hey.
Hey, good morning. So my question is, in the talk, you talked about building the team and those relationships. Do you have any advice or experience about how to kind of, I mean, a leadership kind of has to be a little bit of a disciplinarian at the same time when people aren't meeting deadlines, criteria, that sort of thing. Kind of referencing what the first gentleman had asked, is how do you really balance that as a leader of like giving discipline, but not in a destructive way, I guess, if that makes sense, to build them up, but say, hey, this is, a little bit of a punishment to get you back on track. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, first of all, you have to be really respectful when you're delivering any kind of feedback, like don't do it in front of other people. You do need to do it when the bad behavior happens, but not like, not publicly. So just pull them aside. And I think, honestly, like I'm just very direct with people and honest with them and I, in a respectful way, right? And you just have to tie it to like, it's not like accusatory, but like, this has these effects on the company or on your colleagues, which is a really good thing, right? Because everyone else is working really hard and you need to do the same kind of thing. I mean, you obviously don't want to explicitly compare one person to another person, like, well, Steve is so good at the, like you don't want to do that. But I think you just have to be honest, direct, and respectful. I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Like again, do you check in with that person?
Yeah, the problem is he tends to mismanage his time is really the
Yes.
biggest issue. So the rest of the teams will usually be on track with timelines for meeting deadlines and all that. And he'll be the one who will be like, oh yeah, I'll get it done like today, and today becomes tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes the day after.
Yeah, I had a similar situation where it wasn't that the person wasn't doing a good job, it was just the prioritization of tasks that was a problem. And I think that's something that people have to work on throughout their careers. So what I've asked of that person is to send me, at the end of the day, a list of what they're going to focus on tomorrow. I know there's a hint of micromanagement there, but I think at some point you will let go of that once there's that trust. And they'll appreciate it. They'll be like, oh, you look at that list like, oh, what did you think about this, doing that first? Because for me, it's not that important. You can probably move that around. And at times it can be because they're not sure they have the power to make that call on what task to do first, because on a high level, because they think everything is important at the same time. So I think just for a few weeks, try it out where you ask them to send you the list of what they're working on next, and then ask them, are there any challenges or way you can help them in the process to make their lives a little bit better?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, is asking, like, telling them, I want you to be successful. Like, what do you need to be successful? Like, having a conversation that way is a good way to approach it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no
got it.
worries. Hi.
My name is Linda Fain. I'm from Bungie, and we have a wonderful culture. And I'm really impressed by the intentional culture that you're developing. I wanted to know, is there someone whose job is to design it and execute it? Because so many game development cultures are organic. It sounds like you have a master plan.
Looks like that way, but it was, I think it just came from the people. We're very similar in that nature. So it became organic, and at some point we scaled so much that we have what we call the Culture Club. So it's like, originally it was a fun committee, now it's Culture Club. So we make events and kind of riff on more on things that we like to do as a group to facilitate bigger events like the Wizzy Awards that I was mentioning earlier. So some events would need a committee of people, and it's composed of the people who work there. It's not like it's just specialized to cultural events, but they're from us. But I think high level, it was definitely organic. Everyone just wanted to do random shit.
It is, but I will say that myself and Nora and our other colleague Michaela, like we all act as kind of the guardians of our culture as well. So because we've grown, and so anytime you grow, you're going to introduce people that are maybe not an exact culture fit, and they can blend, they can figure out how to fit in, but they will also try to introduce things that you're like, ooh, that's not going to track well with. So anytime I see something, I'm like, I don't think that we should do that.
Language-wise, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
5 minutes, cool.
Hi.
Hi. So I run a small studio. We're just 8 of us. However, we're expected to scale pretty rapidly this year. And one of the things that's been important to me as a leader is bringing on diverse people. And I'm not simply talking gender, race, or culture. I'm also talking mindset, interest, things like that. And in my experience in the game industry, a lot of studios focus on what they'd call cultural fit. And I'm just wondering what your take is on that and how your studio, handles talent acquisition and onboarding, just with regards to diversity / cultural fit. Yeah.
I think for us, it's very similar. It's just about how people will fit one another, regardless of gender and cultural background. So the interview process includes several people, and even our talent manager, who does bring in the people, she's aware of what we stand for and our values, and if they will mesh well with everyone, regardless of like what their role is. So the interview process and how tiered it is includes not just me as the hiring manager, but the people who they would work with, and then they can give input on like, oh yeah, I think they can work well with me, kind of thing. So yeah, we make sure that it's not just the hiring managers, it's other people from the team that also interviews them.
Cool. Also, my mother wrote same words, different language.
No way!
Really?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I will have to get your card.
We'll have to talk after, yeah. Thanks for the talk.
Oh,
Very
thank
valuable.
you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Daniel Gomez. I'm from Argentina. I'm a studio director. Our studio is kind of new. It's been around only 2 years. We're around like 50 people, and the majority of us are all guys.
Right.
So the first year we only had one. We're all artists. We focus on characters, and we only had one female artist. And so my mindset going in is like, well, there's no difference. We're all the same. Just because I didn't want to treat her different or whatever. So I was like, during the year, well, she moved on. She's doing other stuff now. But I felt like it wasn't the right approach. Like, just pretend that there was no difference, right? To give you an example, I don't know, I don't know, in our studio at least, I don't know how it is in other places, but guys are always joking around, busting each other's balls, they're competitive, but we're like super, it's kind of like a way of just like having fun, right? And I think she kind of got into that too, and then she realized she didn't like it so much, like halfway through or something. So now there's, and also something that didn't help is that she wasn't a really high performer either. So, that was, so now there's more women coming into the studio. And I'm wondering like, if you guys feel that you're like, look, I do think you should treat maybe a couple things differently, or maybe like from your perspective, like how would you like your studio head to treat you, or if there is any sort of difference in the way you would be treated or the way things are communicated. So kind of just to give you a little bit of background, my style is like, I'm super straightforward, just straight to the point, but then at the same time, like, we can just talk anything and, like on that human level, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't like padding things and like tiptoeing around stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just like super honest, straight to the point, and so I don't know if there's anything you guys feel that there should be a difference or there shouldn't be a difference, right, and I should just treat them exactly like I treat any one of the guys, or I don't know.
Well, I think you have to kind of, like we said, like there are some women, like I don't mind direct conversations, straightforward conversations, but I'm not like every woman, you know, like, and I think some men don't like that either. Like it's, everybody is different. I mean, can you just be transparent with your women and say, like, you know what, we're coming from a background of being like all dudes, and maybe we lack a bit of awareness of like how that might impact the situation. And like, maybe like after they've been there for like a month, like let's just do a check-in and let me know, like, are there things that you think that we should do differently? Like, I think, because it feels like maybe there's like a bit of a blind spot there.
Yeah,
Like
for
you just
sure.
want to be transparent with them. Yeah, I don't know.
From my experience, like I worked in a studio where it's all men, I was the only female, and there wasn't that difference of treating me differently. So I appreciate that, and at the same time, you have to be aware of like the activities that you guys do after work or during work that might just be male focused, that might not be of interest to her. And I think for me, it would be more about you understanding what I'm passionate about and my goals from working with you or for you. That is more critical to me than you being aware of like, oh, am I treating you differently? You know what I mean? So you showing ways that you're addressing the goals that I'm trying to meet and what I'm passionate about is a good way to acknowledge me and make me feel more fit within your culture versus the other things, which might not matter to me.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I could like jump in super fast. This is a little bit more complicated.
Oh,
but-
we
or
have.
no,
I
you
think
guys
we
are
have to wrap it up because we're
Okay.
over time. But why don't we chat outside?
I think it's
yeah.
2 or 4.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, do the surveys. We love feedback.